Welcome, everyone. We're really excited today about bringing you this webinar. One of the most frequently asked questions at Swim Drink Fish is, how does my community get more swimmable water? How do we stop pollution from going into our waters that keeps people out of the water? How do we deal with the impacts of sewage? And today's webinar is here to help you find those answers. But first, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather here today. It is that of the Mississaugas of the Credit of First Nation. From the time immemorial, they have been and still are the stewards of the lands and waters of this area here in Toronto. Through our program, Swim Drink Fish has begun and is committed to fostering better relationships with Indigenous communities in order to continue the stewardship of the waters which we all rely on. Lauren?
Hi, Mark. I'm coming from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. From time immemorial, they've been and still are the stewards of the lands and waters of this area. And we are committed to fostering better relationships with Indigenous communities in order to continue the stewardship of the waters on which we all rely.
Thank you, Lauren. I'd also just like to thank Our Living Waters. Our Living Waters has helped us with a number of webinars on the impacts of sewage in Toronto, in Vancouver, out east, and we're really appreciative of their support. Our Living Waters has an ambitious goal: all waters in Canada in good health by 2030. Thank you for all your support. So today, as I indicated, we're real excited about giving you really solid advice and a real clear blueprint as to how your community can open up more access for swimmable water. We call it the Swimmable Water in Your Community webinar, how to make it happen. And, you know, I think if I have this t-shirt on here today and I think about a community that really had great success in building and finding more swimmable water for all the people in the community, it was Kingston, Ontario. In Kingston, Ontario in 2001, the organization Lake Ontario Waterkeeper started. And as the founding waterkeeper, one of the first issues we worked on in Kingston was the issue of sewage. We were out in our boats and going along the harbor front, and we were looking for where pollution might be discharging into the water. And it always seemed like we were running into floatable condoms and plastics and tampon applicators. And this was starting to pollute the shores of the Thousand Islands as well, a place where I was a lot on Wolf Island. And so we were like, it was almost like secret. We were trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And we couldn't get any documentation, or we couldn't get any transparency around the sewage being discharged. So we started to investigate. And that investigation over a number of years led us to determine that the pipes in Kingston were constantly either bypassing or overflowing with sewage. And it was because the system was underbuilt. It wasn't large enough to deal with all the sewage, particularly after heavy rains. And so, along with Canadian Environmental Law Association, we brought a complaint to the Ministry of Environment about the City of Kingston's sewage. And that got us into a lot of negotiations, and they were heated, etc. As you know, the City of Kingston was doing its best, they felt, and it was unfair that they were being targeted while the rest of the province was being let off the hook. No one else was investigating other cities for their sewage. But that, I'd say, it melted away very quickly, and the city soon recognized that we had the same motive here. We both had the same goal. We both wanted clean water for our community. And the city decided that transparency was the way to go. So we signed a historic deal where the City of Kingston agreed to let the community know when there were overflows of sewage, also to do monitoring, figure out how much was discharged, and to clean it up. And this process, this notification for the City of Kingston that they worked out with CELA and Lake Ontario Waterkeeper and all the Thousand Island communities ultimately grew until, with technology, they were able to post real-time monitoring on their website for anyone to see at any time that would alert the public to when there was sewage going into Lake Ontario. It was an amazing and key milestone for what happened next. Because once the city and the community and the groups who were working for clean water were on the same page, had the same facts to work with, we were able to start to address the problem, and started realizing there are a lot of areas in Kingston with small change, with expansion of infrastructure for treatment of sewage, with separation of combined sewer overflows, the rain and the sewage, that there would be a lot of other access in Kingston for the public. And one of those sites in particular was the Gord Edgar Downey Pier, which was called Breakwater Park. And the city, really, I have to congratulate them, along with our other partners, federal and provincial government, and the community groups, led by those who had the mass swims we were hosting with the arts community, Shoreline Shuffle. All these public engagements around the water ultimately contributed to the city of Kingston deciding that they could open up a new swimmable access at Breakwater Park. And with some money and some real great designs by Claude Cormier and the architecture firm from Montreal, they came up with this beauty, which is called the Gord Edgar Downey Pier. And I just, I want to say something about Gord, because Gord agreed to have this pier named after him before he passed away. We let Gord know about this because we'd worked with Gord for 20 years. He lived across the street from Breakwater Park at one point with his family, and he always wanted deep water urban swimming pier at that pier for everyone. And so when he found out about the work that was going to open this pier up to the community, he was very excited, and we were very proud and honored that Gord lent his name to the pier and ultimately became the Gord Edgar Downey Pier because of Gord's father, Edgar, and that was Gord's middle name as well. So it's really just, incredible success story. But what we want to talk about today is how we got there. And how we got there was through transparency. Really, it was around the idea that we needed to know what was happening so that we could start to use that information to start protect the lake. And that takes me to, the introduction to Pippa Feinstein, who is an incredible lawyer with Swim Drink Fish and Lake Ontario Waterkeeper. Pippa's worked for us for many years. She articled with Lake Ontario Waterkeeper. She has extreme knowledge and experience with nuclear waste issues, but she also worked on a model sewage alert, a template for your community to pursue transparency around pollution in your, on your water's edge. And so I'd like to welcome Pippa to the show. Pippa, how are you?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for that lovely introduction and for inviting me to come and speak today.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting, and I'm just so excited that we're having the opportunity to talk about the model sewage alert, but also give you the time to sort of take us through it in a really in a way that we can understand and see the potential and the possibilities around it. So if I can just start, Pippa, I'd like to, I guess the very first question to you is, what is the basis of the model sewage alert, and what is it meant to deliver to communities?
Sure. So most broadly, the alert is meant to support the public's right to know about the quality and health of their local water bodies so that they can make informed decisions about how they want to swim, drink, and fish in those areas. But more specifically, it's also meant to help members of the public who are concerned about this issue of sewage releases into local waterways. It's meant to help and facilitate them to articulate the issues themselves and what they'd like to see. And it's also meant to show local utilities and municipalities how simple it can be to implement a real-time public sewage modeling alert. Finally, I think, finally though, a byproduct of the model's use is that it, as you can say, as you were talking about before, it can increase transparency around this issue and make more people aware of the scale of the problems here. And ultimately then that awareness can be mobilized to create or build on more political will so that larger issues of aging infrastructure design can be addressed, so that into the future there won't be sewage bypasses or any releases of raw sewage into local waterways.
And maybe you can just tell everyone just how it came about to have this model sewage alert developed here in 2021. Just tell them what went into getting to this stage.
Yeah, so the alert itself as a document was drafted back in 2017 with grant funding from the Great Lakes Network. And I consulted with a number of organizations to produce what ended up being the final draft. It's available online. And those organizations were Lake Ontario Waterkeeper, Ottawa Riverkeeper, the Ontario Rivers Alliance, Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, the Alliance for the Great Lakes, and the Freshwater Alliance. The model alert was informed by, back then, a sort of cutting edge notification template prepared by the US Environmental Protection Agency. And it was also based or informed by right to know sewage legislation that was coming out of New York State at the time. Although the alert itself has been drafted for use in Ontario and in taking into account the sort of legislative landscape in Ontario, it can be very much applied from the West Coast to East Coast because, you know, the legislative landscapes in different jurisdictions don't actually differ that much. So it can be a sort of North America-wide type model alert.
So if I said to you, Pippa, that you know, there are probably 800 communities in Canada, but probably 8,000 in the US who have problems with sewage and closures of beaches and swimming areas, are you saying that this would be applicable to all of those communities?
I think you could say that it would be a helpful template for all of those communities. And at least for many jurisdictions across sort of different Canadian municipalities and utilities, the model alert would be a very helpful starting point. Great.
And how hard, like, let's just ask the straight up, the obvious question is, how hard would this be for a community to take the model sewage alert and try and operationalize it in their community with their water utility or with their city?
Well, it should be fairly simple, and that's because a lot of the information that is required in the model alert is information that local utilities and municipalities are already required to collect and share with provincial and federal authorities. So the only real difference in the alert is ensuring that this information is disclosed to the public as well as other government agencies and organizations. And then depending on the municipality, the model alert really stresses the need for real-time monitoring rather than simple modeling of sewage flows. So, you know, depending on the community, it might require a shift to monitoring, but that is also in the service of greater transparency and accountability around sewage overflows.
Pippa, do we have any examples of cities that are currently using the model sewage alert or something like it across Canada?
Yeah, for sure. There are really helpful examples. One of them is Vancouver. Mind you, Vancouver, Kingston, and Hamilton have really great publicly accessible map-based platforms that show members of the public where sewer infrastructure is located, where outfalls are located, and it also provides public access to real-time monitoring that's shared with public.
That's amazing. Let's get into some more of the details, if we can, Pippa. I know everyone has access to this document. You can get it. The links in this program, people can get the links to the model sewage alert. But let's just talk about what you've done to try and help us understand it, this step-by-step process that really details how combined sewer overflow alert modeling works. My understanding is there are 3 portions of the alert document, which we can work our way through now. And then later, maybe come back to another 8 sections very quickly that you've also included to support communities who want to put this into practice.
Yeah, of course. So the whole model alert document is only 11 pages. And those 11 pages are divided into sort of 3 rough portions. The first portion is the introductory portion, and it's the first 2 pages of the alert document. And it provides some legal and policy context around sewage bypasses and the right to know. And it also gives a very brief sort of description of CSOs as a problem and their environmental impacts and the scale of issues in the Great Lakes. This introduction section also, however, contains brief descriptions in sort of layman's terms of each of the sections that are in the alert template itself, sections 1 to 8. And it also provides a rationale for each section so that community members using the document or utilities who are consulting with the document understand why certain sections have been included in the alert and what they're meant to achieve. So moving on from the introduction, the next 5 pages of the alert document actually provide legal language for sections, for 8 sections that would together comprise a public alert. And that can be a public alert that becomes a bylaw perhaps, or at least alert requirements that might be included in permits for sewer operators and owners. And then the final 4 pages are appendices. And these appendices include notice templates. So anytime some kind of notice like signage or real-time email alerts, for example, are described in the alert template, a corresponding appendix is provided with what the signage or what the notice can look like, including further boilerplate language. So those are really the 3 portions, and that's how the alert document is organized.
That's fantastic. I'm going to come back, Pippa, and get into some of these, some of the appendices items around notice and signage, etc. But if you can just hold on for a minute, I'd like to bring Lauren Brown Hornor into the conversation. Lauren, welcome again, and thank you for the acknowledgement earlier from Vancouver, the land acknowledgement. Lauren, for those of you who don't know, she is the Vancouver waterkeeper. She's with Swim Drink Fish, lead strategy. Lauren is also a lawyer. I've known Lauren for a couple decades. She was there with the group Fraser Riverkeeper when I was out there. We launched in 2006. And it was interesting because, you know, we were working with a real environmental hero, a lawyer named Doug Chapman. And Doug and I had worked on a number of different cases out in Vancouver. But Lauren, the very first case Doug wanted to work on in Vancouver was sewage. Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, well, we certainly have an extensive history of working on sewage pollution here in Vancouver, Fraser Riverkeeper, dating back to our original sampling that we did with Doug Chapman in 2007. And yes, we were taking sediment samples at the bottom of False Creek, and we were sampling outside of leachate of landfills, but it was really sewage that kind of captivated us because it has to do with recreational water users and our ability to interact with and enjoy our water. And so out of those first samples that we took, we've really grown and expanded that model to become what is now known as the Vancouver Community-Based Water Monitoring Hub, which is one of Canada's anchor citizen science water monitoring hubs, along with Lake Ontario Waterkeepers Water Monitoring Hub. And we're inspiring many other similar water monitoring hubs around Canada. So in Vancouver, we sample at 3 sites on False Creek. That's year round. So we're really supplementing the great data that comes out of Metro Vancouver that's shared with Vancouver Coastal Health that presents it to the public. They test during the swim season, which is really summer, but we know we've got a vibrant rec water community here who use the water all year round. And so they're interested in data. So we're able to share that data with them on our free website and app called Swim Guide. And so our samples basically supplement that other great data coming out of Metro Van. So like many North American cities, combined sewers and other types of discharges from water treatment plants, they really contribute to a shocking amount of sewage flowing into our waters. There are some key numbers that I'm going to share with you, if you've got a thick stomach, that we've been able to use to illustrate the magnitude of this amount of waste. So combined sewer overflow reports from WERSR, the wastewater systems effluent regulations, show that in 2017 alone, there were 39 million cubic meters of raw sewage deposited into Metro Vancouver regional water bodies. So if you can picture that, it's 15,625 Olympic-sized swimming pools, as far as the eye can see, full of untreated black water, gray water, and stormwater. That's approximately how much effluent overflows into the greater Vancouver area just 1 year. The Vancouver Harbor receives reported 25 million cubic meters of untreated wastewater. Fraser River Keeper receives 10 million cubic meters of wastewater. Burrard Inlet, 2.2 million cubic meters. Keep in mind, these are just numbers from 2017. And we know that the volume flow in 2018 was probably around 25% more than in 2017. They can fluctuate a great deal depending on a variety of factors. And our beloved Falls Creek received 755,000 cubic meters of wastewater. It's horrible, yes, but we also want to congratulate and thank the municipalities of province for being so transparent with these numbers. We don't want to penalize them for that. But in the meantime, we know that no one does want to swim in sewage. They don't want to splash or play in the water where their kids or their friends or their family, where there's combined sewers or other sanitary sewers releasing millions of liters of untreated sewage from our homes and businesses into it. And obviously these waters contain sewage which has that's water laden with bacteria, pathogens, viruses, parasites. It's not only harmful to us, but to the aquatic community as well. So lots of reasons as to why we're out there with our team of citizen scientists sampling and reporting as much as possible.
Now, Lauren, I remember back in 2006, and we were working on the issue of sewage in Vancouver, and the Olympics were coming up, 2010. And I remember, trying to get information about the combined sewer overflows in Falls Creek and, what was being discharged and where around Vancouver. And it felt like we were, releasing some of the data we had acquired, that we were somehow, uncovering a secret that people didn't know that all this sewage was being treated. And I felt like, once we were able to, Fraser Riverkeeper was really able to share the data around what was being discharged in Vancouver, it really seemed to get the community on your side. And there's been a real push for greater transparency today than there certainly was 15 years ago. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. And I really do think that, Swim Guide and our sharing of the data we were collecting and also sharing the data that we were able to get from Vancouver Coastal Health was a huge impetus behind, that push for transparency. And it's not like we're uncovering a dirty secret. We're actually doing, a service in, helping share data with the public, because they do have that right to know. And so I really believe it's all the change that's going to happen. It's just enhanced transparency. It all starts with a city or municipality's willingness to come to the table and be open and transparent with the data. And so one of the best ways they can do that is through real-time monitoring or real-time alert system, where they can share with the public in real time when those spills are happening. Because we all have that right to know, right? We have a right to know if there's pollution impacting the water we use and enjoy. We all have the right to know when and where a sewage overflow is occurring and as close to real time as possible. The province of British Columbia has set a very lofty goal to eliminate sewage overflows, but that's not until 2050. That's nearly 30 years away. So while we commend the province that they're reporting the amount of sewage discharge, and they're one of, the best examples of a city doing so or province doing so, we still have a very long time to go to continue to accept this amount of untreated waste in our water bodies, right? So in the meantime, before we have eliminated it, we are asking that a real-time alert system for sewage spills be implemented to allow rec water users to make those informed decisions about when and how to interact with water.
Mm-hmm.
And, Vancouver has one of the most active waterfronts in Canada, and it's year round, it's accessible. So we really feel that not only having this information not only will help swimmers, anglers, paddlers make informed decisions about how to connect with the water, but it will help us all understand the scope of the problem we're facing, and it will ultimately help us protect the health of water users in Metro Vancouver, because it's really, that public interest in water activities driving those advancements in infrastructure. So just to take you back for a quick moment, in June of 2019, we recommended that Metro Vancouver adopt a communication strategy to share those notifications about sewage spills with the public. And in the meantime, Metro Van has taken a major step forward in advancing transparency, because in October of 2020, just recently, they announced that they are going to be providing real-time public information on sewage overflows through a map and an opt-in email system. So that's a great step forward. It's a powerful indicator of change. We're excited about Vancouver's decision, and we hope other cities like Toronto are next. The real-time sewer overflow map and that email system will provide that great venue to share really important data, rather than having people dig through retroactively, like in a year's worth of a report. It's going to be, in close to real time. And we're hoping that future versions of this map will include CSOs, because right now it's just going to include SSOs, the sanitary sewer overflows, and other discharge coming from wastewater treatment plants. So we're hoping it's a layered approach. It's going to keep getting better and better, and include more and more data. We would love to see them connect to a communication strategy through Twitter, like if they could tweet or consider utilizing a Twitter feed equivalent to ensure that public notifications are made immediately. That would be amazing, and kind of remove some of the barriers of like an opt-in email system. Of course, continuing on with clear signage, continuing with public consultation, providing feedback. These are all really great steps and indication that they're taking this seriously.
That's great, Lauren. And you know how long, you mentioned Toronto. Here in Toronto, we've been trying to get to that same point where you are in Vancouver now, where there's a real willingness to work together around transparency. We do hope to get there soon, but I just, to be honest, we're not there yet. So congratulations to you on that. I guess the big question now is, just where you're at. And you've been working at this for a long time. Where do you feel swimmability is in relation to False Creek or other areas around Vancouver that were off limits in the past? Are you hopeful?
Oh, I'm always hopeful. I wouldn't be doing this work if I weren't. But yes, Vancouver has been buzzing with excitement at the prospect of making False Creek, the heart of downtown, the jewel of Vancouver, swimmable. This possibility is not just desirable, in my opinion. I really do think it's doable. I think we can build on the momentum of other major cities that have had successes at making once polluted urban waterways successful. Swimmable. It's been done before, and I really think it's a great indicator, a great metric of, the health of a community is how is the health of its water. So most notably and remarkably, we've got Paris. They opened up its once polluted canals to swimmers in the summer of 2017. We have examples coming from Chicago and Washington and Boston. They're all actively working to make formerly trash-laden and polluted urban waterways safe and clean for public swimming. And obviously, we have our amazing example in Kingston. And Vancouver, the Vancouver City Council in 2017 did declare it a goal to make False Creek swimmable and to restore shellfish harvesting once again. Now, there are a lot of steps that are going to have to go into that, much more testing, sampling, hydrological models, understanding of the baseline before we can fully come up with a path forward. But it's really in building that community, doing the sampling to build that data set of understanding. It's absolutely foundational. So we wholeheartedly support the idea of getting to a place where False Creek is protected for swimming. I should note right now it's not necessarily a primary contact water body, meaning it's not protected for swimming. But any day you go down there, you see people jumping in off their paddle boards, they're falling off their kayaks, and they're swimming. So it should be protected for swimming.
That's amazing. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You know, for Swim Drink Fish, it's pretty exciting too, just to point to two of the examples where transparency has been so important around sewage impacts and sewage. Those two cities, Vancouver and Kingston, are also where you and I have been working for a long time, Lake Ontario Waterkeeper and Fraser Riverkeeper. So it's great to hear from our grassroots advocacy work and how this is helping us achieve swimmable water in our community. So thanks, Lauren. Pippa, are you still there?
Yeah, still here.
Good. We still have some more work to do. We went through the 3 sections of the 11-page model sewage alert, but we didn't get into some of the appendices, and they're really important, I know, because it's more than just the alert. There are also some public notification and signs and things, and you've done such an incredible job of putting together the details of what needs to happen to have a model sewage alert. So why don't you take us through some of that now, and let's talk about that together.
Yeah, sounds great. We can maybe walk through each of the sections of the alert template,
Sure.
and I can let you know about some of the appendices too. So starting with section 1, this is about signage. Section 1 of the template requires there to be very clear signage for the public in the vicinity of all sewage outfalls. It specifies that their location, where they have to be. So for outfalls on the shoreline or submerged outfalls, there has to be clear signage that contains the contact information for the sewer operator, a description of the contents of that particular pipe, a warning for the public of what to do if they come into contact with raw sewage. And then it also should contain information on how the public can sort of opt in to real-time public alerts for when sewage bypass events happen. Section number 2 of the alert concerns publicly accessible mapping. So it requires, again, publicly accessible online maps of all sewage outfall locations, as well as clearly labeled water bodies and public beaches that receive these discharges. And that mapping can be interactive, or sort of as an interim measure can just be access to maps that show the infrastructure that people can situate themselves within the sewer shed as well as the watershed.
Great. The first 2 things don't seem too hard.
Yeah, and again, for each of those, there is a sort of template, boiler template for what those signs can look like in the appendices.
Great.
What a sign could look like, and what mapping could be. Sections 3 to 5 concern public reporting. So for those who would opt in to real-time reporting, for example, it has the contents for what that real-time report should contain at the start and the end of a bypass or a CSO event. It also contains requirements for monthly reporting and annual reporting. So perhaps we can walk through these briefly. And again, each of these is also subject to, or has sort of, there's a provision of boilerplate language for each of these in the appendices as well.
Great.
So section 3A requires real-time reporting at the start of a CSO release event. It requires public notification to happen within 4 hours of the start time of the event, although many communities advocate for notice within 1 or 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It specifies the type of media that needs to be used to alert the public, so whether that's social media, text, email, or postings online. And then the content of notes. So the location of where bypasses are happening, the receiving water bodies and beaches, date and time for the overflow event, as well as a generic sort of health warning, and the cause of the release, such as higher precipitation volumes, for example. So that's at the start of a CSO event. Then once the event ends and water isn't flowing out from the infrastructure anymore, an end time release report is required. And that report would contain all of the information that was in the sort of alert at the start of an event, but it would also include, in addition, the total duration of the event, measured or estimated volumes released. And that would be within 4 hours or within 1 or 2 hours of the cessation of the event. Then moving on to section 4 of the event, monthly reporting. So the model alert requires reports to be posted monthly online and remain online, and wherever possible using machine readable formats to provide the public with information about the types of releases that occur within the municipality or region each month, the location of all outfalls, again, receiving bodies, beaches, dates and times for bypass events, duration, volume discharged, causes of release. But then it also requires public disclosure of the level of treatment that is received for discharged contents, as well as results of any water quality sampling and measured flow rates within sewer infrastructure. So that kind of information about water quality sampling, level of treatment received, and flow rates sometimes takes a bit more time to come in, so that they're not always available for real-time reporting. So the model alert requires that to be disclosed to the public on a monthly basis. And then the last type of reporting, section 5 of the alert, specifies annual reporting. So it requires all monthly reports to be summarized and posted online, again in machine readable formats. And then it also requires reference to activities that the municipality or the utility is undertaking to address the kinds of infrastructure problems that are leading to CSO events and bypasses in the first place. And it's through monthly and annual reporting that the public can get a sense of monthly and seasonal trends in reporting, so that they can understand how infrastructure operates over the course of a year.
Great. And the final steps?
Yeah, so the final steps, sections 6 to 8 of the model alert require all municipalities to make pollution prevention and control plans publicly available online. And they also require continual sort of feedback loop and collaboration with members of the public to ensure that once a model alert or once an alert is being implemented, that it's really serving the community. So it provides opportunities to sort of periodically consult, review how the alert is functioning, and sort of tweak it over time to ensure that it's serving the community's articulated needs. The final section of the alert, section 8, is just a standards definition section that usually accompanies permit language or bylaws. And those are all the sections. That's all the model alert.
That's incredible, Pippa. Thank you very much. Just before we sign off, maybe I could just go through really those a summary sort of what we learned today, Pippa. 1, the model sewage alert is an advocacy tool, a starting point for communities that want to see more action to address CSOs, and advocates can take what they need from the model and leave the rest. Number 2, the requirements in this model alert are not significantly more than what's already required by law. And the model does much of this policy bridging work for communities and municipalities. 3, it shows municipalities and other local authorities how potentially simple it can be to design and implement proactive public alert systems. 4, we already have examples in Kingston, Sudbury, Hamilton, Seattle, Vancouver, all showing that fulsome real-time monitoring of sewage and reporting is possible. And Calgary has eliminated CSOs altogether, with Edmonton not far behind. And number 5, simply that this work supports the public's right to know about the health of their local waterways, so they can make informed decisions about how they want to use those spaces for recreation. I think that captures everything. I mean, I just can't tell you how what a benefit it has been to have you here, Pippa and Lauren, and to talk about this. And I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today. I hope you are able to operationalize and put in place your own model sewage alert in 2021, 2022. Thank you.